this is brand new information that's coming out, 29% of women are in C-suite roles in corporate America. 26.7% of women are in tech roles. Okay, so that's in our tech industry. Women make on average 84 cents to every dollar a man makes. And that's starting their career at a $15,000 pay gap across corporate America. 2.3% of all VC funding goes to all female teams. But the data shows us that the female founded teams that are funded outperform 2.5 times relative returns. So we're seeing huge gaps here. And then we're showing, and the purpose of us existing at We United is this fact here. We have improved women in STEM 1% since the year 2000. If your organization received those kinds of results, I don't think you'd be thrilled. And if your pay increased 1% since the year 2000, I don't think anybody would be thrilled. So with that, I wanted to explain some of the why behind We United. We are a leadership development organization. We focus on leadership that impacts so many topics, right? And parity is always going to be front and center to us because it's such a critical leadership topic. Why? Because profits are impacted so much for everyone, men and women. And what do we need? Men and women coming to the table to have these critical and very important conversations. This organization is not a women's organization. It's a leadership organization that invites in men and women to be a part of the solution. We are a uniting group. We are an informative group. We are not a performative group. So we invite everyone to the table, men and women of all backgrounds, to come and participate in these conversations. And with that, I wanted to say how much I appreciate our leaders that are on call today, that represent our ecosystem and that took the time and care. They care to be here. They care to influence what we're talking about, and that matters to us so much. So with that, I'm going to turn it over and start with our panelists to introduce themselves, because they can do that way better than I can. And I'll start with you, Shane.
All right, thanks, Jackie. You know, it's truly my honor to be part of this webinar today. You know, as I've gotten to know you, Jackie, and the We organization has started, it's something that our company embraces at a really high level. There's lots of my DigiKey friends that are on this. I've looked in the people list or the chat list, and this voice that you're trying to create, or awareness about how we need to work differently. So I know today we're going to talk AI and all the complexity, but this is an entire, like, to me, there's just a mindset and opportunity around how we work that we're going to bring out today. And so I have the fortunate opportunity to lead human resources and some other functions at DigiKey, and we're truly thankful for the We organization.
Thankful for you, Shane, and we'll go to you, Chrissy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Jackie, for having me. My name's Chrissy Collins. I'm the Dean of the Division of Continuing Education here at the University of California, Irvine. In my role, I'm responsible for leading a team that builds and develops programs that interface with various companies to help to upskill and reskill employees. And so the future of workforce, everything that's happening out in the world is of top concern to us, and we're very much paying attention to it. So this conversation is really, really important. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. Okay, and Ariana, we'll go to you.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I hope I can share some of my insight. I am a product manager at TTI. I handle all of our ceramic capacitors, but I also came to TTI through our college development program. So I think I have a little bit of a unique insight there. And I also serve as the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter lead for We United.
And she's doing a fabulous job. Okay.
Thank you.
Frida, we'll go to you. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Frida, and I'm so excited to be here. So I currently work as an analog and Miss Signal Circuit Designer here at Zalent. And I happened to join We United 2 years ago. And last year, I got the privilege to attend the annual leadership summit through a scholarship. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you we were so fortunate to find her as she applied for our scholarship, got it, came to the summit, and here she is in the industry. So that is a success story, and we're so excited to have a very good representation of just entering talent that's been in, just about that 5-year mark. And then we have, Shane, who's HR, and Chrissy, who's preparing our students at the college level. So, this is a very well-rounded group. I also want to say, please, everybody, we are going to go into a breakout room today. We're going to have some discussion first, then we're going to go into a breakout room. Highly encourage all of you to take the opportunity for a couple things. One, networking. You are going to connect and meet with people across the ecosystem, across the industry. That is extremely valuable. Please do not miss that opportunity. And the beauty is you get to have a discussion topic. So it's not uncomfortable, it's not awkward, and you will just have something very relevant to be talking about. So please participate. Highly encourage you to have your cameras on. If you cannot do that or you don't feel comfortable, please reconsider. But if you must, then keep your camera off, but please attend. Don't exit during that time. This is very critical to meet and align with people across the ecosystem. So also please remove all distractions, right? Your phone, anything else going on. Let's just get into this conversation and all of us do this together. So with that, I'm going to start with you, Shane. And just talking about, just that entry level question of here we are recruiting talent, we're doing it different, we're using AI tools. How are we filtering things out right now? How are we making sure the right people get through? Are we over indexing? How does this look? Just at that entry level question with AI, how are we doing this? So I'll leave it to you to plug away.
Yeah, maybe not an easy one to unpack perfectly, but let's give this a really good shot here. So I think one of the things that we have to recognize is their AI has really strong entry points in certain areas, and talent acquisition is one of them. So let's just put that over there. It can drive efficiency, it can make us quicker, all of those different things. And so we're not going to spend any time talking about that today. I think one of the things, though, that we all have read about AI as we're at the top of the hype cycle is where does that human element and judgment come into play? And when we think about the race for talent and the need to grow your companies in the complexity of the world that we all live in and work in today, we're going to have to be really careful that we're actually not hurting ourselves with AI. So, I get the efficiency on the front end, but one of the things that's really helped DigiKey is how do we find people with really unique experiences as they apply that we can build on top of and leverage that talent and further in our organization. So I think one of the things that I want to challenge leaders is you may put a job description together and it has all these wonderful things, and I value job descriptions, but I also think they have a place that you need to box in a little bit. If we're only going to scrape talent based on a job description, your company's going to miss out. And so how are you as a leader, when you're working with those hiring managers, being really clear about, yes, I do need this technical knowledge to be able to, Ariana has to be able to, do her job as a product manager. So we need that technical side. But what are those other skills necessary to be an effective product manager? And that's where I think we really have to require hiring leaders to not just hand off that hiring to talent acquisition and HR, but how are they being active in that process as HR essentially serves that. So that's really a key point for me that I think that we have to make sure that leaders understand where it's required. Efficiency, yes, let's use it. But I think AI might be more effective at the back end is how are we making decisions, and those people that are onboarding at different stages of their career, are we promoting them? Where have they moved in the organizations, and how do we use that data that way as well? So I think right now it's this, hey, I'm going to use AI as fast as I can to get through a bunch of applicants. And as I follow some people in the Minneapolis area that are recruiters on LinkedIn, they're telling people, like, stop. like company, you have to stop doing that because you're missing out on really, really strong people. So I think leaders, you need to be part of this voice. You know, you can drive efficiency and great, but at the cost of what? So I think I'll leave it there for now. But this is where this human element comes in the use of AI, and leadership is required. Jackie.
I love that. And really, basically, what you're saying is that hiring managers need to be a part of the HR process, right? And not just turn it over to HR, but to actually also look at character. So from what I'm hearing, what you're saying too, it's not just skills. It's, you know, who's a dedicated person, who has the values of the organization, who's willing to learn. You know, all of these things matter so much. And really, Shane, you came in a principal from a school, and so you were not in the industry, right? When you came over to DigiKey. So that is a very out of the box way of thinking when your company brought you in, when DigiKey brought you in. That's a perfect example of them just being out of the box and not and taking a chance on someone, and it worked out amazingly well.
Yeah, there's a nice ecosystem around me to support that. Jackie, just one other thing that I failed to mention is that the other thing where I try to challenge leaders a little bit is what are you willing to build? You know, you go essentially buy talent, right? Like you're pulling it in. If you think about I'm buying talent, but what percentage are you willing to build? And I think there's a kind of a zero-sum game with people. Like it's this or that, and to me, it's an and. So I do need these technical skills, and I'm willing to spend the time and effort to build this part of the technical. Because I think sometimes if someone has 60% of what we need, isn't our responsibility, and I know others in the call will talk about their responsibility then to develop, but I think leaders really need to understand, because I think the world's fast now and we just want to buy and hit the go button. We can't do that. So I forgot to add that.
I'm going to chime in real quick, because I think a lot of times when we hire for skills, especially technical skills, we forget to train in the human skills. And the same goes the other way. When I came into the industry, I had, I was a people person, I had all that, but I had no technical ability whatsoever. And so I learned it, and I was dedicated. Like you're saying, I took my responsibility, and my organization also invested in me. So it was a two-way street, and I became technical. So, but it should go the other way too. And I don't know that we always see that when we hire for technical skills, that we're actually focusing on the leadership development part, the emotional intelligence part, the human component part. So that's like a big part of this too. So we'll go to the next, topic of, the conversation is, we kind of mentioned the barriers, and Chrissy, I'll, get into this with you, because we've talked before about some things. We've, have this history, and I love what you are all doing, and that you're trying to prepare your students for actually what is expected in the workplace. And there's got to be a relationship with the organizations and the college. What are you seeing? What are actual barriers? What are artificial barriers? What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, Shane really touched on some of this. It's really about, shaping what we're really looking for, and for hiring managers and leaders to really pay attention to things like job descriptions and job postings. And it's garbage in, garbage out with AI. So if you put in a generic posting, you're busy, you don't have time to really think about it, what you're going to end up with is, a bunch of people that have those skills, but don't have exactly what you actually are looking for. So you have to really be thoughtful and intentional about what you're looking for, what is a deal breaker versus what is nice to have. And we have a responsibility to train people on the job. I think it's so fascinating that there are so many professions we rely on that are formed through apprenticeships. A great example is doctors. You don't take a doctor immediately out of school and they become a doctor. They're a resident. They have years and years of practice and rotation. Trades, we do lots of time and hours in the profession being supervised. But somehow in the corporate world, we've just assumed that people need to come in with the experience. And it's just completely unrealistic. How could they possibly have the experience if it's a first job? How could they possibly know exactly what to do in your particular culture with your particular industry? So I think we really need to separate what can be learned and acquired on the job, build intentional structures around that to make it happen, to facilitate that, to enable people to succeed, rather than having kind of these really strict and rigid, you need 5 years experience, 3 years experience. You're not going to get that right out of school. But what you might get is someone who is technically proficient and has an excellent growth mindset, a wonderful attitude, great communication skills, interested in working in a team, all of those really important durable skills that are really the key to a successful career. The technical skills are important and can be learned and evolved over time. But I would just make a big play for hiring new graduates, because new graduates can be shaped. They can be shaped to your culture. They can learn who you are. They can be part of it. And if you invest in them, they're going to invest in you. There's all kinds of things about this new generation, folks leaving jobs after 2 years. Well, if you don't invest in people, of course they're going to leave. But if you invest and put your time and energy and focus and provide training and credentials for these new graduates, you're going to have employees for a really long time who are mega committed and are coming in with a growth mindset. So that's really kind of what I'm seeing. And it's related to the upfront work you put into really thinking thoughtfully about what a job description looks like and what a job posting looks like.
That's really good input. And I really love what you said. I think you hit it. Adaptability and durability. If we're hiring, those two things are more important than practically anything else, because it's fascinating. So when we're hiring for a certain role now, that's going to change in 3 months and 6 months and a year. You can't necessarily hire for a specific role anymore. You've got to hire the type of person who could adapt to different environments and different roles. And I just don't think we're making that shift quick enough. I think we're so relying on outdated models that we really don't have that room for error as much anymore. We are not seeing the amount of youth coming into our industry that we need to see to fill the pipeline. We're just not seeing that. So that's why these webinars are so important. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ariana and Frida. And one thing, and I happen to know because I have 2 graduate children who had a miserable time trying to find their job out of college. And so most of what we've noticed is everyone's looking for 5 years of experience. Well, these college students are graduating. I was just telling the panelists that I read an article earlier that was really alarming, and it said that there's more college graduates out of work than there are high school students. So our college graduates are not getting jobs, and it's because there's not enough entry-level jobs for graduates. And I noticed this firsthand because in both the cases of my children, everybody was asking for all this experience. And so where do you start? And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Ariana and Frida, to say, how was this for you? Right? In your job search, now you're there at TTI. Obviously, it's worked out beautifully for you, Ariana, and Frida's just gone through the whole experience. But I'll just turn it over to you to say, from what you were getting into, what you were applying for, and now that you're in the workforce, what is that gap and what are you noticing? And this is not corporate for your company. This is just you have peers that this is talking industry-wide. So what are your thoughts on that?
It is absolutely miserable. I do not wish that process on anybody.
Okay.
It's really intimidating. And I'm thinking back to my time, I'm firing out my resume and, just seeing if there's any bites, because there's no entry-level jobs anymore. I was in college. I didn't have any job experience, especially in this industry. And I do actually remember, most of the time you send off a resume, it feels like it goes into a black hole. Yes. And that's that. You never see anything back. I did have one experience. I applied to a company. This was not in our industry. This was before I got my job at TTI. And one of the ladies in HR actually called me and she said, "So we're not going to hire you, but can I give you some feedback?" And I was like, "Oh, this was really unexpected." And that was so memorable. We sat on the phone. She walked me through my resume. We made changes. She gave me interviewing tips. And I was like, I can't believe you just took time out of your day to help someone you're not going to hire or speak to ever again. And I think so highly of that company now. And I encouraged many of my friends to go apply there. But I think, you know, we're talking about AI. My hope is that with using AI, it frees up time for recruiters to make those more personal connections, because you want to have a good reputation of your culture. And frankly, ghosting candidates is not how you can accomplish that. And so I do think that intelligently implementing AI hopefully would free up recruiters to make those more human and personal connections.
Okay, thank you for that input. That's really good. Frida,
well
what do you
said.
think?
So from my experience, when I was applying for jobs, I feel like companies generally like over-index certain requirements, like the years of experience, when sometimes you are generally like eager to quickly learn and grow into the role. Because another thing is the fact that not everyone has had the same experience or the opportunities to be able to have the same credentials.
Right.
But some of these requirements are like so strict, and irrespective of where you're coming from, they expect you to have it. Because I think for fast growing fields like engineering, usually sometimes it's so easy to learn and adapt, not just matching those checklists they have on the job descriptions. Because I think some of the real barriers for entry level roles, when it comes to real barriers, it's really about you having the necessary technical skills to be able to be effective in a role. But certain things are things you can actually learn while you're on the road, such as trying to learn using tools. But sometimes they put these years of experience as very strict requirements instead of candidates that are being able to like even learn in the job.
It's a really good point. How are you both? I want to ask you one more question while we're on this topic. How are you both feeling about culture? So here, you know, we're trying to advance cultural, systemic change in our industry. When you're when you're applying for a role, you've both applied to many, right? So this isn't even specific to your own organization, but are you finding that people are talking about culture? And then if they are, does it match what you thought? Like when you actually arrived in the workplace, was it what you imagined?
Yeah, I mean, we all know TTI is big with the culture, and I would certainly say they make a big emphasis on it and absolutely live up to that. But talking to my other friends, they do envy that I work at a company that values culture and not just talks the talk, but you know, walks the walk. And I think that's important, especially with early talent. You know, for the most part, I would say people in the younger generation expect remote work. But if that's not an available option, I think it's really, really, really important to have a positive company culture. And that's the best way to retain people if they're going to have to come into the office. And, you know, frankly, you know, I grew up in COVID. I graduated in COVID. That's just the reality of my generation.
Yes, I agree. Yep. So how do you feel, Frida?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's so basically the culture that I saw from outside, that is basically what I'm experiencing, which I see it's like very, very, very good. One of the examples is for instance, the idea of, let's say, inclusiveness. Because usually if there's that culture that creates the whole idea of me having that inclusive environment, it allows you to share ideas freely, do things more freely, as well as to be able to ask questions when necessary, which is really important for growth. So that is one of the things I could talk about in terms of like the culture.
That's good. It's super important in our industry. So I want to open this up to all of you with the next question. Before we go, remember, get ready, everybody. We're going to go in a breakout room soon. Fix your hair. um, so career ownership. So this is kind of a big topic, and this is why we have, you know, people on the corporate side, and we have some, you know, rising leaders with us today, because there is a balance between what each individual is doing to take ownership of their career and what the corporations are doing to promote it. And so this is big for us because at We United, we do have programs. And that's why we love organizations like TTI and DigiKey, which, by the way, I didn't even think about it till now. 2 of our platinum sponsors, go figure, right? That are participating, woohoo, TTI and DigiKey, that are literally, you talk about walking the walk. These are big investments. And what are they investing in? It's programs, leadership development, mentorship, and also the ability for their own people to connect outside of their industry. Or their company, I'm sorry, to connect outside of their 4 walls. They're providing that opportunity. I have to say, it is incredibly interesting to watch when a corporation brings forth this handing a silver platter, like, here you go, here's this opportunity. And sometimes how difficult it is to get people to take advantage of that opportunity. So this is what we notice all the time. So I'm not picking on DigiKey and TTI. I'm saying in general, in the industry, this is just one example. There's this opportunity. So how do you feel? I'm going to, maybe go to you, Chrissy, and Shane first. Like, from the corporate side, what are you seeing with the responsibility of the organizations to bring forth the programs? And are you seeing that they actually work?
Yeah, I mean, such a great question. And things have changed dramatically from the time that we were coming up to what people expect now.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yes.
super happy about it because there was a time when for us to build relationships at work, we had to go to cocktail parties, we had to go to things after hours, you had to learn to play golf. It's just like all this stuff and these expectations of expense and time. And, I was a young mother when I was really trying to build my career, and those things were not accessible to me. I could not spend time after work. So I've made a really intentional focus in my work to build those opportunities within the daytime, to make sure that they're structured, to make sure they're intentional and thoughtful, to make sure that people don't have to spend time outside of work to meet people outside of their organization or to get ahead. I just think we need to shift our expectations and make it so that this can happen. And then personally, I'm a pretty gregarious, outgoing person, but I hate networking. Can't stand it. I find it really difficult. And so, but it's a necessary thing we have to do to take ownership of our careers. So I really go in with a plan. You have to think about it. Who are you going to talk to? How many people are you going to meet? What are you going to share? What are you going to do? I still do that now. I'm a dean of the university, and I still go into a networking reception with that outlook. So there's a personal responsibility there, and then there's also a structural leadership responsibility there to create those opportunities for our younger employees to kind of build those networks and create that culture that we want. Culture is intentional. It doesn't happen by accident. We have to make an investment. We have to invest in onboarding. We have to invest in training. We have to invest in sustained and ongoing professional development. But then we also have to invest in the cultural elements. And it's a lot of work and a lot of time. And sometimes when times are tight, those are the things that go away. But I encourage leaders in my network that when times are tight, those are the things you have to really lean on, because that's what's going to help your organization to survive and thrive when things are difficult.
Yeah, you know what you said too, and then I'm going to go to you, Shane, is building the time during the day. I love that. I absolutely love that, because I think it's essential. There's a lot of working parents that they just don't have the bandwidth outside of the work hours. And by the way, the person who stays till 5 is not the hardest worker anymore. Right? We have to get used to this idea of hybrid work. Some people do their best work on a Saturday when, they're catching up on emails, and they're, other people don't want to work on a Saturday. So I feel like we've got to realign and readjust our expectations. We can't think the first person in, the last person out is any more the hardest worker. That is not true. Also, networking. I'm going to comment on this real quick because I agree with you. Like, I'm on camera a lot, but I'm actually an introvert. And I have a hard time sometimes with networking too. I get a little overwhelmed. But what I do love is relationship building. So I think if you can reframe it as relationship building, this is why we develop these programs with We and try to give people an opportunity in a structured format, because some of us understand and appreciate networking can be really challenging. and not all of us golf, right? Golf is still a big thing in our industry and it's wonderful. And I wish I could golf. I just don't have the bandwidth, the time, and all of that. But I think it's a really good networking opportunity, but not all of us can go out and go on the golf course, right? So Shane, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I won't be redundant, but I'm going to double or triple down on. As a leader, it is absolutely your responsibility, and how I frame this in my leadership and with my team, in our rhythms of work, in our
Okay.
how are we providing that inclusive environment. So I will essentially require, I say that nicely, my leaders to highlight somebody in our on their team in their one-on-one, and then I will write them a hand note. I will stop by their desk. I will send them a very personal email. Hey, just so you know, you came up in our one-on-one today. And I heard something in a podcast actually this morning. It says, as a leader, you have a lot of capital to spend. How are you spending it? I stopped by someone's desk on Tuesday, and we were just talking about her positively in a meeting. I said, how's the impact of that new person coming in? So I just took a hard left right into her office when I came downstairs, and I swear, like, she just lifted out of her chair because I took that time. And so I'll leave it there. I don't want to be redundant, but let me talk about a few things about this. How do you take career ownership and how do you make yourself visible? Because I think that's hard. And you have all the data that shows that, for women and versus men in that visibility in their careers. You've talked a lot about that, so I won't get into the data there. But I think it's really important that we are clear about the outcomes that we want to drive towards in our teams and with individuals and in the organization. And yes, there are numbers, but there's also these other things that you're responsible for. And then especially as you're newer in career and you're trying to find your way, and like you said earlier, big companies, it's a little harder. You don't want to, give a show and tell email to your boss and say, look what I did. That feels weird. It's, but how do you find yourself looking at problems that need to be solved, and how are you asking questions, maybe inserting yourself a little bit and driving to those outcomes? And that's where I really tell people when they get frustrated, it's like, well, my boss, when a conversation starts with my boss doesn't, I very nicely call a timeout for them. And I'm saying, okay, let's be really clear about what % of this career is your boss's responsibility and your responsibility. And again, call it 70-30, call it 60-40, I don't care, but it's way more your responsibility, than your boss's. So I will probably stop there, but it's just like, what actions are you taking and what were those results? And I do think that you have to show that once in a while. I mean, there's flat out times I'll go to Dave and say, my team saw this, here's what we did, and we crushed it here. How else is he going to know? Right. So you do have to have some of those things. And so the other thing I think is effective, and then I'll stop, but it's this idea when you do get a chance to have meetings with folks in your one-on-ones, how are you on offense in those one-on-ones? How are you getting what you need in those one-on-ones? Because if you're just doing an update, then do that in an email and say, oh, by the way, here's the things I actually want to discuss in my one-on-one and where I want feedback, and here's where I have questions. And that starts to show the interest in your own career as well. So that's kind of when I think about that career ownership and promotions and how do you become visible. You can't wait for others, but you also can't be so overt that people are like, hold on a minute, like there's that balance. So, but leaders, you have to create this environment in your leadership. It's to me, it's not negotiable. And I can look around DigiKey and there's people on the call, and if I had them look at the teams that are most successful, look at the environment that is being created by those leaders. It's a no-brainer.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is a leadership responsibility. So you talked about being proactive. I absolutely love that. There's a fact I came across today, and it said 46% of women have PhDs in the STEM fields, but only 15% reach CTO level. Some of these are systemic barriers because, and a lot of women were noticing it doesn't matter the highest levels you could go. Don't advocate for yourself. Shane, what you just said is so critical. And that's why organizations that bring programs like mentorship, I'm going to harp on this as much as I can because it's showing a 30% return on talent progression. So we must be looking at programs. Shane, what you just did was a mentorship opportunity. it's like, where can we pull in mentors in these organizations to look at career pathing? When you're having your reviews, are you talking about where you want to go? Are you talking about your next steps? Like Shane said, don't wait for someone to tap you on the shoulder. Tap them. Hey, what do I have to do to prepare for this role? What do I have to do to someday be CEO? What's that projection look like? What does that look like, right? Start now. It takes years to get where you want to go sometimes, but tell your managers what you're looking for, and look for all the opportunities to develop.
Jackie, can I just add one quick thing there? For anyone early career on the call, there are 3 things that I recommend you get and you build for yourself to help to advocate for your career. One is a sponsor, so that's someone who is going to talk about you when you're not in the room, and you need to be explicit about what you're looking for. The second is a mentor. That's someone who can have a sustained and ongoing connection with you. It can be inside of work, outside of work, but someone who is really intentionally committed to helping you through your success. And then the third, and this is something I have, and it's actually the name of our group chat, is a Council of Queens. And I don't know if it's a Council of Kings for Men or whatever it is, but it's a group of professional, bright colleagues who you trust, who can be a sounding board and provide you with some real truth and also some real support when you're in the dumps. So those are just 3 really important groups as you're building your career to help with that career advancement component.
I love that, Christy. And we do talk about a personal board of directors. We've talked about this many times, is getting people on your personal board of directors. Usually it's 3 to 5. These are people you can go to that are not afraid to tell you the truth. So it's not your mom, your sister, your cousin. These are people you've worked with that maybe, they don't have as much of a personal investment, but they really want to see you thrive professionally. So they'll give you the feedback. Great input, Christy. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into a breakout room. And we've prepped you, right? So we have a lot to talk about. So I'm going to read a couple options. So you're going to go into breakout rooms. This is a leadership opportunity. Somebody's going to raise their hand, and they're going to be kind of like the leader of the group. And they're going to make sure that everybody at least introduces themselves very quickly, so that everyone gets to know each other. And then you're going to ask one, the leader's going to decide based on who's in the group. You either have 2 questions that you can talk about. So if you're coming from an individual standpoint, what are the most effective ways to communicate your readiness and qualifications with confidence and clarity without being tapped on the shoulder to your superior, to your manager? So that would be one question. The other would be for managers and leaders, how can you better recognize high potential talent that may not naturally promote themselves? And where might bias, familiarity, visibility be influencing your decisions in hiring? And are you taking everything into account to hire fairly? So those are the 2 questions. But really, I think it's important to talk about these topics because it's like, are we promoting ourselves, and then what responsibility is it of the organization? But before we get going into the rest of the conversation, what nuggets came? If anybody wants to put in the chat from your group, did anything stand out to you? Did anybody talk about anything? I know it was a quick amount of time. Did anybody have anything to add? So we'll just watch in the chat. I see Dave Doherty. We are just returned to the main room. Okay. So anybody, let us know for our panelists, when you were in the groups, how was it going? Were people talking about this topic, or is it just too quick to even determine?
Yeah, we're the quickly centered on the idea of we have to include people that are different than us, the diversity and perspective, not only from a candidate perspective, but an interview perspective, and then building your team. Christina talked about, she's a leader who wants to continue to grow. And I think that's the other thing. If you have a leader that wants to continue to grow, I think they're naturally going to do that with the people below them, because your team is the best kind of reflection of who you are as a leader. And so I think that was maybe missed earlier too, is probably places where unsuccessful leaders have done what you talked about with Kevin Wilde, is that you kind of tap out and you stay where you're at. And so that was a really key point in ours. You want to work for people that want to continue to grow and are motivated to do so.
Yes, and really, I love what Jania is saying. Your voice is power. It is so true. Communicate what you want, and I think that a lot of men do this incredibly well. We could be doing that too. Say what you want to say. Have those one-on-one discussions. Um, you need to express interest in advancing and advocate for yourself. Yes, 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 and always be learning. This is so critical. I think that, for me personally, I dedicate about an hour a day, and I always feel like I wish I could go away for like a month and just be like, just do my development, because the more you grow and learn, the more you realize you need to grow and learn. It's like one of those things. So you're hoping it's just never ending. So all the leaders that are out there that feel like they've already been there, done that, please take a hard look at that and know that we can all continue to grow and develop. So the reason this is so important, and I'm going to have my team, Spencer, if you could do me a favor and put in the chat, we're going to be doing a press release about this, but you're getting first dibs on this report that we are now putting out into the industry. And it's about leadership, and in this case, a lot of data on women in leadership. We all know we're in a time right now where DEI has kind of been at the back burner, more in the corporate world, but we're seeing the impacts of that already. Very important for organizations to stay focused on the very critical leadership topics that we're talking about. The reason this is important, listen to this fact, it's in the report. Women leave tech 45% more than men due to cultural reasons. Not because they weren't qualified, it's because they weren't promoted, they weren't a part of the team, they didn't have a voice. 45% of highly valuable, qualified talent. We cannot afford to lose our good talent. So women, step up, be trained, be valid, be on your game and speak up. And leaders, men and women leaders. Now, this is a woman issue too. Many times women are hard on other women, right? We have that issue too. All leaders, men and women, listen to what Shane was saying. It's a leadership issue. We need to have very diverse perspectives in our teams. So we're getting to time, but we have a couple things to get through that I think are important. So before we get to our final question, I do want to circle back on the promotions though, because I know a lot of people talked about a lot of things. This is probably my big hot spot is promotions, because I think hiring talent in this age of AI is one challenge. But how are we promoting talent? So once we have those people there, it's like all these discussions we're having, I would say if we could just bring some focus and visibility within our organizations to promotion strategies, this would be like a game changer to impact that 45%. So before we get to our final question, I'll just open it up to the panel. Does anybody have anything to offer that would be advantageous for people listening to hear in regards to promotion strategies?
Yeah, I actually had 2 impromptu meetings about that yesterday, because that's something that we have identified that maybe isn't our strength, and trying to get better about it. I think the solution is a designated career path with goals and KPIs based off of data, not necessarily just a gut feeling or, oh, this person's been here the longest. But it at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that just because you do XYZ means you get this promotion, and so it's important to find the balance between, yes, they've accomplished this, and this based off of this data, and they're also ready to be a leader in this, and this way. And maybe that's where the development skills come in, and companies can invest in those soft skills and development skills.
I really like that. And then we had talked before about that bridge period of time. Do any of the organizations offer that, where somebody comes on and there's like a bridge period where you can learn, the necessary skills? Is that being implemented now? I'm literally legitimately asking. I have no idea if companies do this. Anybody have any comment?
Yeah, I think we do it, but I don't know that it's always very intentional. I think it depends on the leader. And I think maybe what you're leaning into is how do you formalize that just a bit more, right? And And I love what you said, Ariana, is that around career paths and things like that, you know, so that what I tend to think about promotion is I think it's really important for leaders to give people insights. You know, I work with, it's not only setting the goals, but you know, my leaders, you know, I talk to them about things that they're doing well, or I recognize those in the moment. Because sometimes too, if we get caught up in that promotion, like you said, Jackie, sometimes things can take a long period of time, like even years. And I thought you said earlier. And so what I try to do is when I see a shift or a change with something they've been struggling with, or it's been harder to, you know, a lot of the work with my team, it's fairly enterprise wide. So it's even harder at times to get good traction, is to recognize that. But I try to give my leaders as much as possible insights into what I'm seeing for them. And sometimes that's almost like a promotion. And I know that sounds a little, I'm not trying to be fuzzy on that, I promise, but I like to give people insights. You know, hey, I think you can do this in the future. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about taking another role in the business? And sometimes they look at me like I'm crazy, but it's like, you know, those are the things that I want people to know and understand, because if you're only fixated on the promotion, I do think at times that can be a zero-sum game. And I thought you said it well, is sometimes companies, they latch on to the ills of the past and they don't move forward on certain things. And I think at DigiKey we do that a bit in certain ways. We just have to let go of how maybe we didn't do things well in the past. And when it comes to, you know, kind of that people strategy part or promotions, and how are we giving people insights and setting very clear you know, goals and outcomes for folks, and then just move forward. And I think that's some opportunity for us.
If I could jump into just to build on what Shane was saying just for 1 second, is I think the insights on the positive, what you're doing well, are also as important as your blind spots and what you may not be seeing.
Correct.
And
yes,
I think, you know, leaders are often reluctant to have those difficult conversations, but it is our responsibility as a leader to have them. And that clarity is actually kindness. It may not feel like it in the moment. It may feel difficult and tense, but if we're not giving that clarity, people may be missing opportunities without knowing why. And so I think it's our responsibility to really share that side as well.
Oh, I love that. And this comes back to what we said about leaders developing too. If you as a leader do not want to have tough conversation, that's a development opportunity for you as a leader, right? Because it's robbing your talent of their potential progression. So that's why I really think if we take a hard look at our existing leaders, not just assuming they're already trained up, are the people in those existing hiring roles, are they trained up? Are they able to have those conversations? And really, as we're coming to time here, I wanted to let you know, as a leader in your organization or as a contributor to your organization, the financial performance is drastically impacted by everything we're talking about. AI is not going to replace you. You will be the one to let AI, you know, have more value over yourself. If you listen to what Ariana was saying with the KPIs, know your own KPIs. Are you meeting your metrics, your goals? Are you meeting the cultural goals? These are very powerful things that might seem so simple on these webinars. But if you want to stay ahead of the curve, if you want to beat out AI, if you want to be that human that's there when other people aren't, these are the things that we should be doing. Stay ahead of the curve, be very well educated with the tools, utilize the tools that your company is asking you to, right? And do it responsibly. Stay ahead of the game, get the training and the development. And really, at the end of the day, a lot of things are coming back. And I'm going to end with this. It's in the document that Spencer loaded. We are going to release a report every year from We United, but we will keep you abreast of all changes with policies and anything impacting our workforce. But Executive Order 14173, you can look it up. It's in, you'll find more information about this. This was just released, that there is a new order to bring back more of the DEI into the private sector. Okay, and this is because of the profits being drastically impacted by so many organizations. It's already showing up. Now, this order was put in place to for safety and protection and national security in working with private organizations, but it's going to affect everyone, as we've all seen in the past. So how this works, AI is the competitive advantage, data is the economic power, and infrastructure is political leverage. That's how the government sees this. It comes into all of our organizations. So the question I will leave you all with, we're entering a time where systems will increasingly dictate behavior. So the question for you is for leaders. Are you simply going to comply with the systems, or are you going to take responsibility to impact the systems that impact the people? And I will leave you with that question. And I hope every leader, every leadership table really talks about that question. Are you going to be the leaders that impact the systems that impact our people? And with that, I want to thank all of you for being here today. It was a lovely discussion. I hope you all got something out of it. Thank you so much for being here.